When people think about Star Trek, they often remember courage, hope, and teamwork. Captain James T. Kirk, played by William Shatner, became a symbol of leadership and adventure for millions of viewers across the world. But behind the cameras, things were not nearly as peaceful. The actors faced long working hours, personality clashes, and moments of pure frustration. Shatner, who was right at the center of it all, often found himself caught in battles that had nothing to do with outer space. Now that he is 93 years old, he looks back with honesty and talks openly about those hard days. His words give fans a very different picture of what life on the Star Trek set was really like. It was not just about exploring new worlds. It was about surviving the pressure of fame, the jealousy among cast members, and the price of being the show's main star. The heroic Captain Kirk on screen was a very different person from the man struggling with ambition, regret, and exhaustion off-screen. William Shatner's life started with drama. He was born on March 22, 1931, in Montreal, Canada, during a huge snowstorm. Roads were blocked, and his mother had to give birth at home. That beginning almost felt like a sign that his life would be filled with big, dramatic moments. By the time he was just a child, Shatner was already showing signs of talent. At 8 years old, he joined an acting workshop. At 10, he was performing in radio dramas, including The Magic Flute for CBC. Critics praised him when he played Tom Sawyer in a local theater production, saying that even at such a young age, he had a strong stage presence. But while acting seemed natural for him, school was not. Shatner studied economics at McGill University, but he admitted later that he hardly went to class. Instead, he spent most of his time in theater, writing and performing plays. His big break came when he wrote and starred in a student play that became so popular, it caught the attention of TV producers. That opened the door to his first television appearance. By the mid-1950s, Shatner had decided to take a huge risk and move to New York City to chase his dream. He appeared on Broadway, and even though his first play failed after only 20 shows, it was still a big step. From there, he slowly built his career with appearances on shows like Alfred Hitchcock Presents and The Twilight Zone. By 1965, Shatner had been working steadily in TV, but had not yet found the role that would define him. That opportunity came when Star Trek producers needed a new captain. The first pilot episode had been filmed with actor Jeffrey Hunter as Captain Christopher Pike, but the network rejected it for being too slow. When Hunter decided not to continue, Shatner was offered the chance to step in. He accepted and immediately put his own spin on the role. Instead of playing the captain as stiff and overly serious, Shatner made Kirk more relaxed and approachable. He added humor and warmth, making the character both strong and likable. He based Kirk partly on the famous naval hero Horatio Hornblower and partly on Alexander the Great, a figure Shatner had once played in another project. The mix of bravery, charm, and humor worked perfectly. When Star Trek first aired in 1966, viewers quickly connected with Captain Kirk. He became a symbol of hope during a time when the real world was full of conflict. People admired his confidence and optimism. On screen, everything looked like teamwork and trust. But off-screen, things were not so smooth. The set was full of rivalry, jealousy, and constant tension, with Shatner often at the center of it all, although fans saw unity on screen. The cast behind the cameras often struggled to get along. Shatner had a reputation for wanting more lines, rewriting parts of scripts, and making sure the spotlight stayed on him. This caused friction, especially with Leonard Nimoy, who played Spock. In one early episode, Shatner reportedly walked into Nimoy's camera shots 17 times, forcing retakes and frustrating everyone. The two also argued about how certain scenes should be played, sometimes stopping filming until producers stepped in. Other cast members felt their roles were cut down because Shatner and Nimoy rewrote lines to favor themselves. Some even started calling the show the Shatner Show. One of the most famous moments of the series, the interracial kiss between Shatner's Kirk and Nichols' era, also came with its own backstage drama. Shatner at first worried about the audience reaction, but Nichols pushed for it, and together they made sure the kiss was included. Meanwhile, the long hours of filming, often up to 20 hours a day, left everyone tired and irritable. At one point, Shatner himself broke down after nearly 18 hours of shooting, throwing his script and refusing to continue until he was given rest. The pressure of keeping the show alive was enormous, and tempers often ran high. While Shatner was becoming a TV star, his family life was falling apart. He had married actress Gloria Rand in 1956, and they had 3 daughters together. But the demands of Star Trek left little time for family. Shatner often left before sunrise and returned late at night. He later admitted that during the 3 years of Star Trek, he missed more than 200 family dinners. He even missed holidays and important events, including his daughter's school play. His wife grew tired of him never being home, and by 1969, just weeks after Star Trek was cancelled, she filed for divorce. For Shatner, it was a crushing blow. He had given so much of himself to the show, only to lose both his career and his marriage at the same time. Instead of going home to a supportive family, he returned to an empty house. He later admitted that the guilt of missing so many moments with his children stayed with him for the rest of his life. The man who seemed so strong and confident on screen was privately struggling with heartbreak and loneliness. The end of Star Trek marked not just the end of a show, but the collapse of Shatner's personal life. When Star Trek ended in 1969, Shatner faced another painful reality. He was typecast. Casting agents could only see him as Captain Kirk, and they were hesitant to hire him for other roles. For most of the 1970s, he found himself taking whatever jobs he could just to survive. He appeared in low-budget films, sometimes even horror movies, that did little for his career. Money was so tight that at one point, he lived in a camper truck in California. He was separated from his daughters, who lived with their mother, and he struggled to buy them gifts. At times, he gave them old Star Trek props as presents because he could not afford new ones. It was a humiliating period for someone who had once been seen as a rising star. But just when things seemed hopeless, something unexpected changed his fortune. In 1977, Star Wars became a global hit, and suddenly studios were interested in space adventures again. Paramount decided to bring back Star Trek, this time as a movie, in 1979. Shatner returned as Captain Kirk in Star Trek, the motion picture. The film had a massive budget, and although critics had mixed reactions, it made enough money to prove that Star Trek was alive and still had millions of fans. Shatner worked hard to be in shape for the role, determined to show that he still had the charisma to lead. The real turning point came in 1982 with Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Unlike the first movie, this one had a stronger story and showed Kirk as older and more vulnerable. Audiences loved it, and critics praised Shatner's performance. After years of struggle, he was finally back on top. He went from living in a camper to leading one of the biggest movie franchises in the world. For Shatner, it was not just a career comeback, it was proof that he could survive the worst moments and rise again. By the 1980s, Shatner had rebuilt his career. Along with the Star Trek movies, he starred in the TV show T.J. Hooker, which kept him in the spotlight. He often did his own stunts, which left him with injuries that would cause health problems later in life. But even as he enjoyed success, old tensions with cast members never fully went away. Some actors continued to accuse him of being so. His relationship with Leonard Nimoy remained complicated. The two had moments of friendship, but also periods when they did not speak. Sadly, when Nimoy passed away in 2015, the two were not close, something Shatner has said he deeply regrets. Later in his career, he earned new respect for his role in Boston Legal, winning Emmy Awards and showing that he could play more than just Captain Kirk. But age brought new challenges, including hearing loss, arthritis, and back pain. More than anything, Shatner admitted that he feared loneliness as he grew older. That fear, he said, was harder to live with than any physical pain. Today, at 93 years old, William Shatner speaks openly about his life and career. He admits that on the Star Trek set, he sometimes pushed too hard and even sabotaged others because he was desperate to keep the show alive. He does not hide from the truth. He was ambitious, insecure, and often difficult to work with, but he also carried the weight of being the face of a struggling TV show, fighting to make it succeed. Fans now see not only the fearless Captain Kirk, but also the flawed man behind him. Shatner's story is a reminder that even legends have scars. He gave the world a character of strength and hope. But behind the scenes, he faced fear, rivalry, heartbreak, and regret. In the end, his honesty makes his story even more powerful. It shows that greatness is not about being perfect, but about surviving the struggles and still moving forward. William Shatner's life, with all its ups and downs, proves that even heroes are human. Even though William Shatner was already a household name because of Star Trek, his later career showed that he was more than just Captain Kirk. In the 1980s and 1990s, Shatner worked in many areas of entertainment. He wrote science fiction novels, appeared in commercials, and even tried his hand at directing. While his movie Star Trek V: The Final Frontier did not perform well, Shatner bounced back quickly. He showed the world that failure could not stop him. In the 2000s, Shatner surprised many people by winning an Emmy Award for his role as Denny Crane in Boston Legal. This role proved that Shatner was not limited to one character. He could play a modern, funny, and bold lawyer just as well as he played a space captain. Fans admired his ability to keep working in Hollywood for so many years. Many actors fade away after their biggest role, but Shatner kept finding new ways to stay in the spotlight. This shows how determined and creative he was in his career. Throughout his life, Shatner has had a complicated relationship with fans. On one hand, millions of people adore him for playing Captain Kirk, one of the most famous roles in television history. On the other hand, some fans have criticized him for being distant or arrogant at conventions. There are stories about him refusing autographs or not being very warm during fan events. However, it is also true that Shatner has given countless interviews, written books, and even performed spoken-word albums for his fans. In later years, he became more open about the importance of fans in his life. Without their loyalty, Star Trek would not have become such a big part of culture. In fact, it was the fans' letters and campaigns that saved the show from being forgotten after it was cancelled. Shatner eventually admitted that while he sometimes struggled with fame, he respected the love and energy that fans brought to the series. This relationship shows the tension between being a private person and a public figure. One of the most tragic parts of William Shatner's story is the loneliness he has often spoken about. Despite his fame, wealth, and long career, Shatner has admitted that he sometimes felt isolated. His marriages were not always successful, and he faced personal heartbreak, such as the tragic death of his third wife, Narini Kidd. In 1999, Shatner was devastated by her loss, and in interviews he described how painful it was to go through such a tragedy while living under public attention. Even though people saw him as strong and confident, behind the scenes he carried a lot of sadness. This contrast between the hero fans saw on screen and the man struggling in his private life makes his story even more human. It reminds us that fame does not protect anyone from pain or heartbreak. For Shatner, the journey was always a balance between public success and private struggles. Shatner has always been known for his unique style of speaking and acting. Some people call it over the top, while others find it charming and unforgettable. His dramatic pauses, strong voice, and unusual delivery became part of his identity. Even comedians made jokes about his acting style, but Shatner took it in good humor. Instead of being upset, he often laughed at the parodies and sometimes even joined them. For example, he appeared in comedy sketches that made fun of his Captain Kirk performance, proving that he was not afraid to laugh at himself. This ability to accept criticism and turn it into entertainment made him even more popular. It also shows that Shatner understood his role in pop culture. He knew that people both loved and teased him, and he learned how to use that to his advantage. One of the most incredible events in William Shatner's life happened in October 2021. At the age of 90, he traveled to space aboard Blue Origin's New Shepard rocket. This made him the oldest person to ever go to space. For a man who spent much of his career pretending to explore the galaxy, actually leaving Earth was deeply emotional. After the flight, Shatner described the experience as life-changing and even spiritual. He said that seeing the Earth from above made him realize how fragile and beautiful our planet is. He also admitted that the trip made him think more deeply